welcome to today's Dementia Researcher Salon meeting. I'm Adam Smith, I'm the Programme Director for Dementia Researcher, and today, once again, I'm sorry to say you've got me as your host. This session is all about one of the biggest milestones in your academic career, which is setting up your first independent research lab. It's a moment that is exciting, but also, I'm assuming, overwhelming. After years of training and working in other people's groups, you finally have the chance to bring your own vision to life. But where do you start? How do you recruit the right team, manage your resources, build a positive culture, and still find time to think, write, apply for funding, and all the other things that PIs and lab leaders are expected to do? To guide us through this today, as ever, I'm delighted to welcome our two guests. We have, who are being a little shy at the moment, you can turn the cameras and mics back on. We have, first of all, Dr. Ian Harrison, welcoming back to the salon again for the third time, I think. For the third time. See, Ian is a Senior Research Fellow at University College London. Ian established his lab during the pandemic, focusing on the glymphatic system and its role in clearing protein solutions from the brain. With fellowships from 2 charities and an award from Alzheimer's Research UK, his path to independence is something he's going to share today, and with us will come his experience and tips. And joining Ian, we have the incredible Dr. Rosie Jackson, also back for the third time, I think. Rosie is a principal investigator at the University of Dundee, and Rosie researches symptomatic pathology in disease, health and disease. I make this up every time. Rosie does APOE, and I don't know where this comes from. Drawing on wide-reaching collaborations and experience in the UK and beyond, Rosie brings a broad perspective on building and running a lab as well, something that she's been doing for some time in Dundee. So for those of you who haven't been here before, although looking at the audience, I see most of you have, you'll be aware that each of our speakers gives a short 10-15 minute talk or presentation. We'll have a little bit of a chat. We'll give you the opportunity to ask questions. I have some prepared as well. And if you'd like to join us on the stage to share your own perspective, if you've been through this and you've got something valuable to add, we're very welcome to put you on screen so you can share your own tips too. But now, that's enough from me. Ian has very kindly agreed to go first. So Ian, if you'd like to share your screen, I'll stick around until we know that's working, and then I'll hand over to you.
Cool, thanks very much. Right, does that work okay?
It is, that's perfect. Thank you, Ian.
Lovely, thank you very much. So thanks very much for the invitation and for inviting me on today. So my name's Ian Harrison, I'm a Principal Research Fellow at UCL. And so today I'm going to give you a bit of a talk about my experiences starting my research lab at UCL. But before that, I thought I'd give you a quick overview of kind of where I came from academically to give you a kind of bit of an insight into the kind of lab group that I lead. So I did my undergrad degree in pharmacology at the University of Southampton before moving to Imperial for master's studies in experimental neuroscience. And then I stayed at Imperial to do a 1+3 year PhD. So the first year was another master's in experimental physiology and drug discovery with bioimaging. And then my PhD was in neuropharmacology, looking at the neuroprotective effect of a class of drugs in Parkinson's disease using MRI to assess pathology. So after that time, I looked around for jobs and found a job at UCL's Centre for Advanced Biomedical Imaging, looking at neuroimaging in mouse models of Alzheimer's disease. And it's during this time which this paper was published. Oh, there we go. This paper was published, which was the first description of the glymphatic system. So in the field at the time, this caused quite a lot of controversy to begin with, but it caused huge ripples in terms of what this means to neuroscience research. So the initial paper showed that this clearance pathway in the brain was involved in clearing amyloid, but we've been working on a mouse model of tauopathy. So we decided to kind of use the imaging techniques and use the the protocol that had been established in this paper and apply it to our animal model, which we already had in-house. And so we were able to show, and luckily we were the first to be able to show that this system of glymphatic clearance is impaired in a mouse model of tauopathy, and tau is cleared from the brain via this pathway. So it's at this point where I kind of came up with loads of different experiments of where I wanted to take this research next. And they didn't really align with what my postdoc supervisor wanted to go. We kind of had different ideas for which directions we wanted to take the project. So I decided to go it alone and start writing up these ideas for fellowship projects. So as Adam mentioned, I kind of had a bit of a scattergun approach and wrote up the fellowship idea for both Parkinson's UK, looking at the involvement of the glymphatic system in clearance of synuclein, and also the involvement of the system in terms of tau pathology, which luckily were both funded. And that's when I started my group at UCL. So you'll see from the top of the slides, I've kind of illustrated my journey with emojis, as you'll see throughout the talk. But anyway, the first year was just how I imagined it to be. Lots of kind of sourcing equipment, figuring out what animal lines I was going to be using, getting breeders in for that, establishing colonies, and buying in lots of consumables. And this first year of kind of new PI life, running my own research group, was very much lots of meetings, lots of planning, but again, not much doing in this first 6 months. But so these are kind of the thought bubbles that came to my head at the time. It was great because I was kind of allowing myself to make things how I wanted them to be. And these sorts of questions, as in what sort of lab do I want to run, started running through my mind. At the beginning of the project, I also had funds for a postdoc, so I had to immediately start recruiting, which is something I'd never done before, which was quite a steep learning curve. So working with colleagues in HR to look at advertising, interviewing and recruiting the postdoc, again, which came to questions like, what type of boss do I want to be, and what's the research vision that I want to grow and develop as part of my research group, and what about the group culture that I want to kind of foster. So during this time, when I was kind of having lots of meetings and buying in lots of stuff with this new pot of money that I'd acquired, I kind of had lots of kind of imposter syndrome as well, thinking, am I really ready for this? I was sat in this lab ready to go, thinking, oh my God, everything's on me now. What am I going to do? So at this time as well, I made use of a lot of training. So UCL offered quite a lot of managerial management and leadership training courses, which I took advantage of, which was kind of good to kind of make sense of the decisions and stuff I was making. But as you can see by the change of the emoji at the top, this all kind of came to a bit of a head kind of 3 or 4 months in at the beginning of January, where our whole centre got flooded. Our imaging lab is at the basement of a building, and there was a leak on the 4th or 5th floor, which meant that we got all of the leak pooling in our department. So the whole of the department was under about 10 centimeters of water, which meant that we couldn't get into the lab at all. And some of the equipment actually that was in boxes by my desk that I just bought was also now covered in 10 centimeters of water. So to begin with, this kind of got me used to working from home, as we weren't really allowed in the lab. But then you can probably tell from the dates here what is coming. But the postdoc started, or the postdoc that I recruited started at the beginning of March. But then in the 23rd of March, national lockdown happened. And then because of the postdoc that I just appointed, and the stage of the project that we were through, because we didn't really have much data or any other stuff to write up, which other groups did, I reluctantly had to furlough the postdoc throughout the summer months of 2020. But anyway, so we returned to the lab in July 2020 with a phased return. So we were kind of doing, me and the postdoc were doing a 1 week on, 1 week off kind of lab sharing. So we were able to slowly start getting on with the experiments that I'd proposed in my research fellowships. Which leads me into year 2. So after I'd kind of bought this equipment, all the lines were up and running, we'd slowly phased back into lab work everything was now in place. So it was now time for me to start rolling up my sleeves and get the work done. But we were a year behind, so this is pretty much an accurate description of what my life was at that time. It was very, very hectic, trying to get up to date with all the experiments and the timelines that I proposed in the original fellowships. Again, thought bubbles at the time was, are we ever going to get back on track? And lots of times thinking, well, you know, after this set of experiments, it will calm down and we can get back on. And then that was a kind of recurring cycle. Okay, maybe after this set of experiments, it will calm down. But it never really did. And I thought, you know, is this just life now as a PI? So again, to try and make sense of all this, to make sure that I wasn't crazy and that I was, you know, hopefully that this was normal for a PI establishing their lab, I took on some more kind of leadership and project management training opportunities at UCL. And especially at this time, asked for help. So I had a number of different mentors at different career stages. So to kind of seek their advice to see if they'd experienced similar to what I was experiencing. And one of the big things about this second year that I'd come to realize is that there's so much other stuff as a lab leader that you need to do. You kind of, especially in junior fellowships, you write up the timescale of what you're going to achieve in the year, and you write that being a senior postdoc that can kind of do experiments quickly and easily. But there was so much other stuff that I was now dealing with, like managing animal colonies, finances, HR, ordering, doing all the health and safety audits and all the home office inquiries, as well as all the other stuff that I was trying to keep on top of as a scientist. So doing your talks and your posters and scientific engagement. I was continuing the outreach stuff that I was doing, so doing school visits and Cheltenham Science Festival, which I take part in every year. But also now being a named fellow from 2 different research charities, there was lots of other requests that were put on me. For example, media requests, interviews, podcast requests, and funding requests of funders that would approach me and say, could you give us a response to this paper, because we want to put it somewhere in the media. Also, as you climb up the career ladder within a university, other responsibilities get landed on your desk, such as teaching, increased student supervision, and kind of managerial meetings and departmental meetings, as well as the kind of the research community citizenship that we should all be doing. So peer reviewing, conference organising, and mentoring your own students and mentees along the way. But in year 3, everything kind of calmed down a bit. I kind of made peace with the fact that I was just going to be busy for a long period of time, but data was coming in at a steady stream, and we were able to start writing papers. We published a review, we published our first paper with me as senior author, which was quite a big achievement. But I then came to the realization that I was on a 3-year fellowship and the money was about to come to an end at the end of that year. Luckily, one of the fellowships that I applied for came with a 2-year extension facility, which I applied for. But then the thoughts that cross your mind as a PI, as a new PI especially, is, you know, what do I do if I don't get this extension? What is the postdoc going to do? He's got a mortgage to pay as well as me. And kind of thinking, what direction do I want to take the research? It's easy enough to kind of write a project which you think will be funded, but is that the project that you want to do? Is this the job that I want to do forever? Thankfully, I was already in writing mode because we kind of come off the back of publishing these papers. And by this point, I had a better idea, having worked with the charities for the last 3 years, of what they wanted and how the grants are reviewed. But this is where we are, well, a bit further on than this, but for year 4 onwards, the workload became much more manageable. I felt I was hitting my stride, but it took a good kind of 3 or 4 years for me to get to this point. But because of the hard work that I put in before, I'd been able to assemble a really amazing team of people around me, and our lab is and was and is working well, and I was leading it well too, I hope. There was a pivotal change at this point as well. Instead of me constantly asking people for help, I noticed a difference in that people started asking me for help, showing that I was kind of out the other side of establishing myself. I started getting invited to a lot more talks and give kind of prize lectures and things. But the last thing about this time is that it gave me the headspace that I needed. So instead of these kind of worrying thoughts and stuff that I kind of needed to do in the first few years of setup, these thought bubbles became research project ideas. So thinking about a bit of science that I could put in for a pilot project award or a project grant, for example, which gave me that kind of extra stability in terms of having bits of other projects and other funding that came through. And on top of that, kind of naturally, it felt like I was then able to kind of put a grant, a large grant together for dementia, for the Alzheimer's Society, for a Dementia Research Leader Fellowship, which I've just started. So this is where we are now. My kind of group was kind of seeded by that initial money from Parkinson's UK and Alzheimer's Research UK, and we've kind of been supported by a few different charities now. But I hope that I've kind of established this this lab, although it's taken me a while to get there, that kind of looks at the lymphatic system in neurodegenerative diseases. So just some take-home messages. It's not all sunshine and roses, as I've already said. It was the first few years, especially of setting up your own lab, is difficult, which I don't think I really realised at the time. Managing a group as an early PI is going to be harder than you think. So I would urge everyone to take opportunities to take on training as soon as possible and early as you can. When you're writing these grants and writing these fellowships, think of how long it will take you to do something, double it, and then add a bit more. You're not going to be as efficient as a PI as you are as kind of senior postdoc in a lab. Have a mentor that you can help navigate this transition to independence, and try and find one as early as you can. And get your name out there. When you're asking people for help, people are a lot more likely to help you if they know you and trust you. And that's my last piece of advice. If you need help, ask for it. And if the answer's no, if somebody won't help you, ask why not. So just a summary, I think this meme kind of summarizes the first few years of my journey as a lab leader, but I've come to realize now I'm in kind of year 6. This is my ethos to running my lab. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Ian. You mentioned there some of those hurdles you had to overcome in not just in the early days, but then how do you face that? How do you face that adversity? What's your strategy for dealing with that?
Yeah, a lot of it was kind of prioritizing things. So a lot of the time it felt there were so many pulls on my time. It was trying to figure out what needed my attention now, and if it needed my attention now, I could have pushed it to somebody else, or could I, move it down the priority list. But in terms of being able to overcome them, it just becomes a case of resilience. I think by this point, I'd kind of got used to having grants rejected, papers rejected, and it becomes less of a personal, what I thought was, when I first started writing papers as a PhD student, it becomes less of what I thought was a personal attack on my science, somebody not wanting to accept it. It became more of like, right, okay, well, that doesn't work, let's just try the next thing. And you kind of develop this ethos of like, right, okay, what can I learn from that experience that will kind of make it easier next time? And I think that's why by year 3 or 4, everything was a lot easier to deal with.
Thank you. I mean, in the past, we've talked about we've talked a little bit more about kind of when you know you're ready and things, but I'm just trying to put myself in your shoes, whereas you write your grant not knowing whether you're going to get it. That's the grant that I guess decides whether you're going to continue to have a boss or become the boss, and then you get it. And what support is there around you at that point to understand just practically I'm talking very practically, like, hey, where is our lab physically going to go? How do we do this? How do we, is there guidance around you to do that? Did you know what you needed to do?
Yeah, and I think that the answer to that question is very different between different universities. So, for example, UCL, there's very, very few kind of, I don't think there are any permanent research positions that are just advertised. It's kind of, you go in as a fellow and you kind of maintain your group with fellowships before you make the switch to a proleptic appointment. Whereas in other universities, you kind of go in as a tenure track position, and that you're kind of, that's the trajectory. So because I was coming from a fellowship, it was very much like I was in my postdoc job, the lab that I was in and the science all made sense to happen where I was, that I was just going to carve out my own space within that research center. And it's quite, in terms of our research center, it's quite different, that we're a preclinical imaging lab, so there's lots of big MRI scanners, PET and SPECT scanners that everyone uses. It's not really, I don't really have my own bench, for example, which is kind of molecular and cell biology labs would do. So it was kind of incorporating myself and moving from postdoc in the center to being a PI in the center and running my own group, which kind of felt natural at the time, but I guess it depends on the geographically where you are and the setup of each kind of lab or the department that you're going into.
It almost sounds like it's something that evolves from where you were, which I guess is a little bit different if you're staying at the same institution, like, and taking this as a career progression, as opposed to going somewhere new, or where you're kind of coming into a new place, or they've, you know, approached you and set that up. I guess that's the different stages. It's almost like if you just take what was this and you just spread out a little bit, you know, oh, we're going to have these spare benches here.
Yeah, exactly. Because I guess, like I was saying, like, I guess that depends if you're kind of recruited to kind of, you know, here's an empty bench at this university, we want you to come here and set up things. That's a very different experience to what I had. It was very much like, okay, well, this is the lab that I'm working in. Okay, I'm going to order that bit of kit, that bit of kit, that bit of kit. So now I've got everything I need to do the research I want in the lab that I did my postdoc job in. Which is quite a different thing.
Last question. So up to that point, I mean, you still have a boss, though, right? How does that relationship change? I mean, is your pre-boss still the same boss you've got now?
Yeah, so he's my line manager now, rather than my postdoc supervisor.
Right.
But the relationship, you're right, it really has to change, because it's then kind of him kind of taking away the reins a bit and being like, and letting me go and letting me establish myself, which kind of works for him. Well, like in the way our center's set up, there's the center director, and there's 5 research fellows that each have our own groups. So 3 of those fellows are now professor. So everyone has their own group, and they all came in as postdocs or early career fellows that have kind of now establishing themselves. But yeah, so the relationship did have to change a bit, and the conversations become more kind of, you know, appraisal style rather than
administrative, rather than
what data have you got this week? Yeah.
That's interesting. Thank you, Ian. We'll come back with more questions because I've got more. We'll bring Rosie in now. Thank you, Rosie, for being so patient and waiting. But let's get your story now, and then this will nicely round us back. So over to you. I know you're not using slides.
No, I do have slides. Sorry, I lied.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. So I, like Ian, thought I would just start by going through my personal journey to get to where I am now. I am earlier in this process than Ian, so I am very much more in the sort of like year 2 freaking out phase. But that's fine. So that was really useful for me to hear that it gets better. So I did my BSc. I'm originally from Southern California, but I did my BSc at the University of St. Andrews. During that time, I did 2 different internships that really kind of set me up, put me on the stage to the point where I could go on and get my PhD. So I did one at the Sanford Burnham and one at J&J, which is the pharmaceutical part of Johnson. The pharmaceutical company is called Janssen. And both of those got me really, really interested in the brain. So although my undergraduate degree is in biochemistry, I decided I wanted to do my PhD in neuroscience. So I did that at the University of Edinburgh. My phone was so good as to remind me that I handed in my thesis. So I took this photograph of me holding my thesis almost exactly 8 years ago on Sunday. And during that, I became very interested in the synapses and also with ApoE and the role that ApoE played both in healthy aging and also in Alzheimer's disease. My PhD was pretty successful. I ended up with 3 first author papers, 2 second author papers, and 7 co-author papers. And crucially, one of those co-author papers turned into my postdoc opportunity. Because I decided I really wanted to keep studying ApoE and the impact of ApoE on the brain, both in health and disease. And so for my postdoc, I went over to MGH in Boston. It's a joint appointment with Massachusetts General Hospital and Harvard. And for the first 4 years, I was a postdoctoral fellow. And obviously, if you look at those dates, you see that we had some hiccups in there. So obviously, there was COVID. There was also the tail end of the first Trump administration, both of which had effects, although not as big effect as we're going to see in a second. So I started out in the lab of Dr. Eloise Hudry, and then I moved to the lab of Professor Brad Hyman. And I had 4 main projects, but kind of crucially through this, for the last 2 years of my time at MGH, I was appointed as an instructor. And that's basically an opportunity for Harvard to if you need an H-1B visa, get you an H-1B visa, which I didn't need because I'm an American citizen. But one of the major benefits of being an instructor is that you're basically a baby PI. So you can apply for fellowships, but you can also apply for big kid grants. But you still have kind of a mentor, a supervisor, although it's the process of, it's a very gentle process of sort of removing direct management and sliding more into a mentor and less of a supervisor role. And so that was really good for me. It was a really nice process. I could kind of sort of start to stretch my wings very gently rather than being chucked into the deep end, which were about to happen. So buckle up. But during that postdoc, I similarly got 3 first author papers, 3 co-author papers, and one review in Nature. So that was a pretty big deal. I also supported myself. After the first year, I got a fellowship. So it was 3 years of a T32, which became 4 years because of COVID. And then at the end, when I was an instructor, I got a big grant. So I got what's called a R56, which is one of the American NIH grants. And that was really my first big girl grant. And Brad, my supervisor, my postdoc supervisor, was still on that grant, but he was very much more a mentor and very much less of a direct supervisor. Nevertheless, he was still there, and I was still in the system that I'd grown up in. So I was still at MGH. I was still sort of chugging along nicely. And then we decided that we wanted to move back to the UK. And so I started looking around. I say we, my husband and I decided that we wanted to move back. I started looking around. And I was offered a position as a tenure track principal investigator at the University of Dundee. And I started in July of last year. So I'm kind of a 1 full year in. I got 3 grants originally. I got a PhD studentship. I got a Harrington Fellowship, which is a 2-year drug discovery grant. And I got an R01. However, the second Trump administration has made that not happen for me so far. Fingers crossed. It could still happen at any moment. It's the beauty of this administration. And because of that, I have hired 3 people, 1 tech and 2 PhD students, and no postdoc for me, sadly. So I just thought I would jump straight into what I've learned so far. Like I said, I'm very much in that year 2 absolute panic stage. Although my true PI journey started about a year ago. Because I was an instructor at Harvard, I did have a very soft launch into that, but a very steep cliff when I joined the University of Dundee. So coming from the American system into the British system, even though I did my PhD in the UK system, was quite a steep learning curve. No one made me do any paperwork when I was a PhD student whatsoever. Tara protected me from all of that. It was amazing. Thank you so much. And so coming into this new system was really quite tough. Just figuring out who to email in the first 3 months was traumatizing. So my first bullet point is that what I've learned is that this is really hard. It's tough, and that's okay. It's tough for everyone, and it's not particularly difficult for me. In fact, I'm having I think probably a pretty standard time. But it's really, really important to find buddies who are at your level, people who are a year ahead of you, 6 months ahead of you, and chat to them just to know that your feelings are normal, that it's hard for everyone. Also to get their ideas about how they overcame a hurdle that you're now facing. And the University of Dundee has a really nice junior PI group that is every month, and we meet up for lunch, and we spend the first probably the first hour of it kind of griping about how difficult it is to be a junior PI. And then the next hour, we will listen to someone give a chalk talk or watch someone practice a fellowship presentation or things like that. And so it's really, really helpful to have that group of people around you. And if that doesn't exist at your university, I would recommend seeing if you can find people who are keen to join you for that. It's not that difficult to book a conference room once a month, and everyone brings their own lunch, and you guys can, it's really, really helpful to be surrounded by those people. Your productivity is going to take a hit in the first year, probably the first 2 years, honestly. You are your best postdoc, and you are now having to do way more paperwork, way more grantsmanship, way more writing than you ever had to do before. And so your time at the bench is going to take a pretty big hit. And the people that you hire are not going to be as good as you because they haven't spent the last 5 years figuring out how to do it. And again, that's just kind of something you have to take in your stride and you have to be okay with. Prioritization is key. And Adam asked earlier, like, how do you decide for the prioritization thing? Because you're going to be pulled in 9 different directions. There's going to be teaching, there's going to be mentoring, there's going to be paperwork, there's going to be courses you now need to take. So for example, the University of Dundee, we all have to take the PG CAP. That's going to, that takes up time. You have to write grants. You have to build your network, make sure that you don't piss off your collaborators by doing all of these other things when they are fully established and they can ask postdocs to do them for them. So the best way I think of is the sort of diagram of important and urgent. Is it important and is it urgent? And if it's important but not urgent, then schedule it. If it's important and urgent, get it done. And if it's not important but urgent, ask someone else if they can do it for you. Ask someone if they really need you to do it, because the university will ask you for things that they don't need. And if you give just a little bit of pushback, often you can find things get taken off your plate. I will say I'm absolutely terrible at this, but that's fine. Hiring is both really exciting and really tough. It's the most important thing you will do is to try and build the community around you that you want to have around you and build the community that you want to be a part of. Often, when you come into being a PI, you have very little experience with this. I was incredibly lucky at MGH. Brad allowed me to sit on a lot of hiring panels with him, in part because I was really interested and because I asked to be part of them. And I think that was one of the most valuable things that he did for me. I would recommend now, if you are a senior postdoc and you are thinking about becoming a PI, if you're thinking of going for your independence, ask other members of staff if you can sit in on interview panels, if you can be a member of that panel, even if you get no voting rights. Just sit, watch, see what someone is like at interview, and then see what they are like in real life. Because being able to draw parallels between those two things is incredibly difficult. It takes a really long time to get good at it, but it's incredibly valuable. If you don't get that experience, make sure your hiring panel has someone that you trust that does have that experience. So someone at the university who is a good person, a good mentor, and has the kind of lab that you would like to build. Ask them if they will sit on your hiring panels. Your mentor's your mentors for life. They don't get out of it. Your PhD supervisor, your postdoc supervisor, people that you got on with well, if you look up to them, first of all, tell them that because it'll make their day. But second of all, they're locked in. A mentor's not just for Christmas. Ask for help, ask for advice. But I think it's important as well to not forget that if you're a PI and it's your group and it's your money and it's your ideas and it's your science, you are in charge. The buck stops with you. You do not have to do what your mentor said, right? When your PhD supervisor or your postdoc supervisor was your supervisor, they were kind of in charge. And if they had an incredibly strong opinion that you disagreed with, you probably still had to do both things or just their idea. But that's not true anymore. Someone could tell you that an idea is terrible, but if you think it's great, go for it. It is now your party. And that's kind of exciting. It's also terrifying, but it's kind of exciting. I would just say, if you start somewhere new, make the support staff your best friends. Research finance, lab management, stores, HR, all of these people, first of all, they can make your life hell, but they can also make everything so much easier. My research finance person is amazing. She is so helpful. She keeps finding things that I miss. She like gets on things before I knew they were a problem. And I don't know how I lucked out there, but I'm so fortunate because other people have had much worse experiences. So just do your best in the first 6 months to get these people on your side, because they can make your life 100 times easier. They can also make your life a lot more difficult. And just the last thing that I've learned is the amount of paperwork is unbelievable, just unbelievable compared to being a postdoc. And again, there's probably some pushback that I need to get better at doing, to try and say, like, do you actually need this document? Do I need to make sure this document is the best version of this document you've ever seen? Or can I just like tick the box and move on with my life and do something that is urgent and important, as opposed to just urgent? So this is where I am. And I'm sure it'll get better. Ian's reassured me in the last 15 minutes that it will get better. But it's kind of, you just need to be comfortable being in a house full of fire with some smoke, and, so long as the cup of tea is hot, then it'll all be okay. And that's kind of where I'll leave you.
Thank you, Rosie. That was really good and really interesting to see how you and Ian and yourself are very similar advice. You didn't meet beforehand as well, so it's good. I think this is consistent. I'm gonna zero in on one of the things you mentioned there, which was one of the what you felt was one of the most important things, which was the hiring those first team members. And I've heard this before. I've heard this from other people as well about who haven't necessarily hired the right people to start with, and that's been really problematic for how it sets the tone for the lab. And you can't, I think in other countries you can just get rid of people. You can't do that quite so easily here. So how do you approach that hiring your first team members?
Yeah, I mean, it's first of all, it's super stressful. And second of all, it's a really tough decision. I mean, I really agonized over all 3 of the hires that I've made for several days. I kind of sat with it, which is not my usual style. I'm normally kind of I just make the decision and move on with my life kind of person. But I knew that this was going to be really important. And so I think, like I said, I think 2 major things that I did that I think were really, really good for me, actually didn't depend on me at all. So, it's hard to control that. But one is sitting through interviews with Brad where they were going to be a technician for someone else. So I had no personal skin in that game, right? It didn't matter to me if the person was terrible. So to watch someone at interview and see what they were like, and then see what they were like in real life as a technician or as a postdoc, allowed me to be able to pick up things at interview which I would not have picked up otherwise. So just again, you can ask people in your life, in your professional life, can I sit in on an interview, and just watch, and then just see who makes it. Obviously, someone's going to get hired, and then see what that person is like. And the second thing is just, I cannot stress enough, find someone at the university you are at in a position, probably a professor or senior lecturer or whatever, who has a group that you admire the group dynamic of, and ask them if they will sit in on your interview panel, because they have something, right? They got a special sauce that they know, and it's so difficult to explain a vibe to people. But if they come away from an interview and they're like, nope, vibe's off, don't do it, you're like, okay, like, trust them, because they do know what they're doing, or they wouldn't have the group they've got. You don't luck into it. It doesn't work like that. You got it. It's purposefully curated.
It's tricky, isn't it? Because we say to people, you go to a lot of webinars actually, which are coming at this from the other perspective, saying, don't join an awful lot. How do you know which is the right job for you? And you can ask things to spend some time there, and you go talk to some of the people that have worked for them before, and to find out if this is somebody you'd like to work for. It's a little bit trickier I mean, if you're hiring, but you want to make those same things, do you think it's okay to say not go beyond asking for that usual written reference and actually have a conversation with the person that they've worked for before and things? Have you ever done that?
I've had people call me to offer their strongest recommendation for someone. That obviously is fabulous. Um, and of course, you always trust a recommendation from someone you know more than someone you don't, because they have personal skin in the game, right? If you recommend someone to me as a PhD student and they turn out to be absolutely rubbish, then I'm gonna be a little bit annoyed at you, and our friendship is gonna take a bit of a nosedive there. So there's that, but I think yeah, I mean, you can call someone if you're on the fence, but I think if you're on the fence about someone, unless you are desperate for a pair of hands, it depends
Yeah.
why you're on the fence, right? But if you're kind of I don't know, then I would be very cautious, and I would say maybe that's a moment for a second interview with someone else that you trust. If you've got a split interview panel, that's also not a great sign. So I mean, again, if you're desperate, if you need to hire someone because the money's about to run out or whatever, then that's a tough it's a tough
Well, you
call to
raise a
make.
good point there. Did you both do second interviews for your hires, or did you just do them with one?
Um,
Go on, Ian. You've unmuted.
Yeah, yeah, I did the second interview. So I the first person that I hired, we kind of interviewed about 6 or 7 people and narrowed it down to 2, and then I did second interviews with them. But I did the first ones were just online, and it was kind of a formal interview panel. The second one was they came to the lab, I showed them round, I kind of had a chat with, got them in to introduce themselves to lab members. And another thing I was going to add to what Rosie was saying, one thing, the first person that you recruit is the hardest, but after that, once you've got somebody on the ground in the lab that you trust, that you kind of vibe with, it's so much easier to then, because when I started quite early on, I had a very good master's student who I kind of really trusted, who was there with me from the beginning, who stayed on to do an RA position and is now a PhD student. I'd kind of give the person who was coming into the lab, be like, oh, so can you show them around independent of me? And then we kind of have a conflab afterwards and be like, right, what do you make of them? Do you think they'll fit in? So you get that independent kind of relaxed opinion of somebody who wasn't on the panel that has kind of formed a different opinion of them independently.
What about you, Rosie?
yeah, I mean, I did kind of the opposite. I did first interviews with just me, with like a more of an informal chat kind of thing, and then I invited people to panel based on those interviews. I was interviewing people from further afield, so I didn't feel like it was fair to invite anyone in. So I kept everything
you're in
online.
Dundee, right? I mean,
Well, I mean, I was interviewing people in the States as well, so it was like,
oh yeah,
because a lot of my network is still back in the States, and so people who were recommending people to me, and also people don't really want to be in the States at the moment. So some people love it. More power to them. That's my politically correct statement of the day. So yeah, so I kept everything online, but I did do 2 interviews for everyone, and one was definitely more informal.
yeah. I think
I also think it's important. Oh, sorry. I also just think
go
it's
ahead.
important to try and, if you want to build the kind of lab community that is a community rather than just a bunch of people doing their own independent things, it's really important to think about how other people are going to fit into your group as you already have it. And so, in some ways, getting that master student, postdoc, technician, whomever, to also form an opinion of the people that you were considering hiring. I mean, they are going to be sat next to each other every day for 3 years. Like you want them to get on, right? So in
Yeah,
some ways, their opinion of someone's personality is, kind of more important than yours. And it is okay, and I think this is really important. It is okay to hire the second best person scientifically if you think they're going to gel better with the team you've got.
That makes sense. It's tricky, isn't it? Employment law being what it is these days, there's, you know, you kind of, there are questions you'd want to ask, things you'd like to do that you just, you can't do, but you'd know that you'd find out more about that person if you could all, I don't know, socialize together a little bit, or you know, find out a little bit more about them as a person. I think there's probably a skill in honing your interview craft to try and get that down beyond the standard script of questions that HR are probably going to give to you when you go down. Also, as well, I mean, at the moment, particularly in the UK, of course, I think your biggest challenge is probably being rather spoilt for choice. You know, talking to people at the moment, that there are fewer opportunities than we would like at the moment. There's still that bottleneck of people coming through PhD and being allowed to rise. So I've heard of some postdoc jobs getting 100+ applications right now. So it's not like you're choosing between some people who are competent and some people who aren't great. You're probably going to be choosing between 30, 40 people who all look great, and all of them could do it. We've got some questions from the audience. Let's take those. Nathan asks, you both mentioned value in leadership and management training, formal or informal. In your early years as a PI, did you have any specific examples of the courses or training, the kind of more formal side or informal, that helped you prepare? Did you get offered any? Did you self-skill, go watch a bunch of YouTube tutorials on leadership? Or
from my perspective, there was no, I wasn't offered anything. It was very much I had to go out and to source the type of training that I wanted. Luckily, you don't have to dig too deep at UCL, that there's lots and lots of resources and lots of kind of opportunities there for you if you know where to look. But I didn't know where to look, so it reiterates Rosie's point about having those buddies at similar career stages to you and be like, you know, at that first 6 months to a year, like, is this normal? Should I be this busy? What can I do to kind of help? And it's those kind of conversations that got me to think, well, you know, can you do like a training course in project management? And it turns out UCL offer a 2-day course in that, which was invaluable now that I know that it existed. But yeah, I didn't at the time.
There's lots of UCL.
The number
courses.
I also was offered very few things. I think, but similar to Ian, you know, you're talking to your buddies who are a year ahead of you, and they say something, and you're like, that was so profound. Where did you learn that? And they're like, oh, I went on the Welcome Trust Leadership Program, and I'm like, okay, how? And they're like, oh, you just fill in this form. And you're like, okay, cool. Which form? Where? Why is this not? And they're like, oh, it's on the SharePoint. And you're like, okay, cool, the SharePoint. Sure. Where great ideas go to die. You're like, fabulous. So it is really important to speak to the people a year, 2 years, 3 years above you, and figure out how they got themselves to the position that they don't feel like they're a headless chicken anymore.
So go dig around your university resources. They almost certainly will have it there. It just won't necessarily be in the obvious place or have been offered up to you on a plate. Yeah, I can see that, and it's something we've been looking at as well from Dementia Researcher perspective. So if anybody'd like to get involved in working with us on developing some of those kind of training courses, let me know, because the app has training course facility. It'd be online rather than a physical thing, but we could make that happen. Nathan also comments that to thank you both for your perspectives, because they're in the transition from a frantic year 2 PI panic to hitting their stride, and is in that year 2 panic themselves. So sympathies there. We've got another question now, which is from Russell, who asks, thanks for your talks. What are your experiences of attracting and retaining team members versus encouraging them to explore new opportunities? Ooh, that's a tricky one, isn't it? I always, it's interesting when we did I think Ian, you were on this. We did the mentoring podcast series. I can't remember what we called it. Mentor Matters? No, Ask Your Mentor. We did a podcast series, and you were one of the mentees interviewing somebody, I think. No?
Other way around.
Yeah, somebody interviewed you.
Yeah.
Because what struck me from that was talking to these more senior researchers is that there's a point in your career where you become far more interested in helping the people that work for you, more so than even the research itself, that you take your satisfaction out of seeing people progress. How do you balance that? Because when you've got a really good postdoc and you know it's good for him to move, how have you had to deal with that yet? Either of you? People leaving you and you want them to do well, but you don't want them to go?
Yeah, from my point of view, the first kind of 2-3 years was maybe kind of selfishly on my part. I really enjoyed seeing my idea going and my idea coming out as papers or, you know, being presented. But after that, it then becomes like it's great that your ideas are seeding the science, but it then becomes about the people that are doing the science, because I'm doing it less and less myself, and more people are doing the research for me. But yeah, it's a tricky one. That I think it's in postdocs that I've had, it's quite easy in the kind of the relationship that I've had with them. It's quite easy to know if they want to do the kind of PI thing, if they want to do the fellowship thing and go towards running a lab of themselves. And if they don't, I found it quite hard that my first postdoc that I had, he really didn't want that, and he was like, I don't want to deal with all the stuff that you have to deal with.
You don't want the responsibility.
Exactly. But then that was quite difficult for me to kind of to manage and to supervise, because I was like, that's the only experience I have is via fellowships and postdocs and starting my lab that way, of trying to help them navigate their next career stage. Was I had to draw on kind of my network and think like, right, who do I know that has moved or would be able to give them a hand, or who could I get them to talk to? But yeah, but that's the thing. Like we're PIs because we've got to a point where we've taken that step to independence, which is a crucial step. It's just making sure that the postdoc is at the level that they're going to be happy, that they're going to excel. You don't want them to go too early, but equally you don't want them to go too late and to kind of.
And I know the focus for today is on starting a lab, and I guess that's probably a problem for a little bit further down the line. But I think there are ways you can I don't know if you'd agree, there are ways you can deal with that early on by really understanding at the point somebody starts working for you what their ambitions are. What's the plan for the next 3 years? How do you want me to start handing over more responsibility to you over time? Are you just somebody, what part of your job do you enjoy? Where are the gaps in your skills that you can start to grow them and understand their requirements? Rosie, I hear your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I first of all, in terms of like, I've always been very keen on mentorship since like day one. As an undergrad or as a postdoc trying to or as a PhD student trying to help undergrads, even I was very, very concerned that my undergrads were having a good time, that they were, their experiments were succeeding. So I don't know that I've ever really had that switch, but I probably shouldn't have that switch to anymore, because otherwise I'm just going to be like a glorified fairy godmother. But in terms of like kicking people out, I think that there is an element of tough love. And I say this not as someone who's had to do it, but I come from quite a unique perspective here because both of my parents are academics. So I grew up in the world of academia, and I have watched them make different decisions. So my dad went to industry, my mom stayed in academia, and from speaking to them and that kind of thing, it really is. It is kind to tell a postdoc, when you came in 3 years ago, you wanted to be a PI, and if you stay here, that's not going to happen for you. So, let's remember what your goal was. And yeah, it's going to be really tough, but there is an element of jumping off into the deep end, and you don't know until you know, kind of thing. So I certainly have been my mentors have done that to me, and it helped me a lot. So I think there is an element of as kind as you want to be and as much as you want people to enjoy their lives and enjoy science and stick with it because it's exciting and fun and all the rest of it. We live in this world, and this world expects certain things from its PIs, and that's you know, that's the only world we can live in. So you know, yeah, in an absolutely perfect scenario, XYZ would happen, but what about, you know, everything else? So it's saying, it's reminding people of that, and reminding people that staying here and being comfortable is not going to get you what you said you wanted. So do we want to revisit what you want, or do we want to take that really tough step?
Well, I think nobody
that
expects you, I think, as a new, when you're setting up your first lab. I think if you're also honest about your own experience, your own limitations, and bringing the people on board and saying, this is the first lab. I'm not going to necessarily get this right straight away, but let's, you know, setting that culture for open, honest interaction. That isn't, and I don't think that somehow puts you in a weaker position. I mean, as long as you play it right, that you're still confident you're leading things. But I think being honest about your limitations and really thinking things through about kind of what you didn't like about your bosses previously, or what you did like, and taking from that, I think is important. We're nearly out of time. I can't believe these hours go so quickly. I am going to ask you both one question. So if you could travel back, last question, if you could travel back in time 2 years, 3 years to when you were really in the midst of setting up that first lab, you got your grant, what mistake did you made, or what lesson do you know now that you tell yourself to do differently then? What mistake did you make? Or if you made one, come on, you made mistakes, right? Go on, Ian. I think I can't remember if this was yours. You've been on a podcast of ours before talking about this, and I think I know what one of yours was, but it might not have been yours. It might have been Dane or Sarah Marzi or one of the other guests in that show, or a Claire one. What was yours?
I can't remember. But what I would say is,
did you have problems getting equipment? And somebody had problems saying, when you order kit, don't think it'll be there when you start, because it might be like take a year to get, or 6 months.
Yeah. One of the things that I would say is when you're writing that first grant, I touched on this in my talk, but make the timescales of things achievable. It's very different managing a grant as a PI than it is to being able to do that grant yourself as a kind of senior postdoc. Like Rosie said earlier, you're your best postdoc, but you're not going to be able to do the work. You're going to be managing somebody to do it. So, and I think half the struggles that I had in the kind of second year and third year of my group was about kind of like, oh my God, why have I put all these timescales in? We've not made that one, we've not made that one, and having all of that stress that you have to meet
and you put those in because you thought that's what a lean project looked like. That's what the grant
exactly.
I wrote a blog on exactly this topic at the weekend about how lean research can also make it frail and fragile. That, you know, when there's not much space in the system, be that time, be that staff, be that resources that you've written to suit a brief, or because that's what everybody wants to see, but it also means that everything's frail. And are you ready for when timescales slip? What are you gonna do, or when somebody leaves? Thank you, Ian. Rosie?
I have kind of two pieces that are very connected, but this is from my perspective in starting in a new institution as a PI. Number one, don't start in July or August. Just don't do it. Start in September. Because, and this is the kind of more crucial thing, is that everyone who can help you is on annual leave, and it will take you 6 weeks to do everything. Whereas if you start, you get to meet all those people when they're in the building. And so it really is finding the people who will email you back with the answer that you need. Find those people as soon as you can, and then you kind of just have to, don't worry about annoying them. And I think that was the biggest mistake I made, was waiting for everyone to come back from annual leave, and then I would email someone saying, hey, can you help me with this, and they would say, I got an out of office, and I would wait the 2 weeks, and then they would come back to me and say, oh, that's actually not my job, it's this person's job. And so I would then email that person, and then I would get an out of office from them. Just email everyone. Just email everyone, and the person who gets back to you is the person who is the right person. Just
and
everyone
be
else
kind
will
to those
ignore it.
people, right? Be kind to them, but like be kind.
Oh, so kind. Thank you so much. Please, will you? I'm so sorry to annoy you. Thank you very much. Like, say please, say thank you, but you, like, it's not happening unless, as Ian said, don't ask, don't get. Like, it will not happen if you don't make it happen. And that's the biggest thing I think I've learned about being a PI, is that you are the driver. So it won't happen unless you make it happen. No one else is making it happen for you. And so you have to be the person who bothers the ever-living daylights out of HR or contracts. If you need an MTA, oh, that's the other one. Sorry. If you need an MTA, start now. Now. Do not leave MTAs alone. Like, not worth it. Will hold you up for hours, years.
Well, I'm going to wrap up. We've got a few stats that I didn't get out. The average age of a first-time PI in biomedical science in the UK, particularly anyway, is mid to late 30s, apparently. Around 20 to 30, only 20 to 30% of grant applications from ECRs are funded on first submission. So, if you're thinking about setting up your first lab, don't be disheartened if you didn't get the first one or the second or the third, because it's more likely of not to be the fourth. A Wellcome survey found that over 50% of early career researchers reported uncertainty about funding and job security. So, being able to build in people and offer positions and build your team around you is important too. And studies suggest that lab culture is a key factor in influencing PhD students and postdoc satisfaction. So if you want to, you set the culture for your own lab. And I think learning from previous experience of what a good lab is like to be in and what a bad lab looks like, just try to emulate that. So we're going to wrap up with our final thing, which is we have a friendly, well, it's mostly friendly. We've trained an AI model purely on content from the Dementia Researcher website. This has had access to over 3,000 posts on our website, which includes blogs, podcast transcripts, webinar transcripts, articles, job descriptions, event listings, you name it. It's had access to everything in our website. And I ask it every week to give me 10 top tips. And this week it was on how to start your first research lab. And then we test to see if Ian and Rosie kind of match our AI's conclusions. So here are the top 10 tips. Number 1, start small and scale gradually. You don't have to do everything all at once, unless you've written into your grant that you will, in which case don't write into your grant that you will. Number 2, prioritize people. Your first hires will shape your lab culture. Tick, that's been very well covered. Number 3, be clear on your vision, but allow room for evolution. I think that's good. Being flexible, knowing what you're going to do, but then realizing you maybe got it wrong. Or when your postdoc comes to you and says, I think the process you set up for this probably isn't right. Don't say, well, no, then you're wrong. I mean, they might be wrong, but maybe approach that. Number 4, seek advice and mentorship. Learn from those who've done it before. You both said that very clearly. Thank you. Number 5, treat your budget like a grant proposal. Plan carefully, monitor regularly. That's what it says. Number 6, encourage collaboration early. Partnerships bring expertise and resources. Oh, Rosie disagrees with that one.
I don't disagree. I just think it's very easy as an early career researcher to say yes to all of the collaborations that are offered to you, and they just add to your workload. So you just need to I'm 100% collaborate. Absolutely.
See, I read that the other way. It was
but
you
don't take on too many.
You asking other people rather than responding.
Sure, but just remember that every project that you are involved in is another line item in your brain, and you will run out of space. So
Number 7.
just collaborate carefully is what I would say for that one, rather than go all in. I wouldn't.
I suppose. So just to qualify that, if you say realize early on that you could benefit from other people that aren't within your hiring pool, or skill sets that aren't within you seeking support from other lab groups around you to bring resource into your lab, not necessarily in a paper.
For sure do that as much as you can. As much as people will help you, always accept help if you want it done and it's part of your project. But what I'm talking about more is when people come to you and say, oh, could we look at the effect of ApoE in this? And you're like, I will give you cells and no more, because otherwise I'm going to spread myself too thin.
Number 7 was communicate expectations early to prevent misunderstandings within the team. Number 8 is carve out time for yourself. Protect your time to think, to write, and to strategize. So don't do your postdoc's job for them because you are a terrible perfectionist who can't let other people do their work. I know some of us are. Number 9, be open about challenges. Most PIs face similar struggles, which you've both done today. Thank you very much. Examples of that. And number 10, celebrate small wins. They keep you and your team motivated. So there you go. Hey, we got that new machine today, and hey, we all arrived on time. That's cool. Is there such a thing as on time in a lab? Do you? Well, I guess that's what you'll decide to set as part of your culture. What time do people arrive? Anyway, that's all we've got time for today, I'm afraid. We're going to be back next Wednesday when we have Ria Kadaski and Bethan Bazvaran, who are going to talk about the role of biomarkers in neurodegeneration, and that's going to be at 8 p.m. next Wednesday. Speaking of biomarkers, we were pleased to announce this week that Dementia Researcher, the UKDRI, Alzheimer's Society, Alzheimer's Research UK, and Lewy Body Society have all successfully led a bid to host one of the hubs for next year's AAIC Neuroscience Next conference. So on the 27th of February in Manchester, the day after the Alzheimer's Research UK conference, which is also in Manchester, we're going to be hosting a one-day event, which is all about biomarkers, very holistically, everything from technology to cognitive testing to language assessment, gait models, fluid, neuroimaging. We've got a whole day focusing on biomarkers as part of this online conference. So across the 4 days, each hub from across the world, they're in Croatia, Sydney, there's 6 hubs across the world, all contributing to this online platform. Our day is going to be on the Thursday, and abstracts are going to open on the 22nd of September. So we'd love to give some of you, if you're in the UK particularly, we'd love to see some of those biomarker abstracts, but anywhere in the world where you are, you can submit an abstract to that to present at one of those hubs or just online. And we hope to see you in person on biomarkers on the 27th of February. Details are on our website. I've got one last thing to plug and then I'll go, which of course is our first, that we only have 2 more of these salon webinars left in this series after doing more than 65 episodes every week for the last year and a bit, because from October the 15th we're going to mix it up a little bit, and we've got I think 10 salon debates where we're going to bring 2 researchers together to debate some topical and issues. So the first one is over animal models. Is there any point to them anymore? The second one is on, should we deprioritize biomedical research funding and instead spend more money on social care? We've managed to, across these 10 topics, find people who are willing to stand on both sides of these arguments to debate them. So our first of those is the 15th of October. Details are on the website, and we'll be releasing the details of those every week between now and the end of September. But they're going to happen throughout October and November to the beginning of December. So we hope you'll join us for some of those debates too. Phew, we're way over time today. That's all we've got time for now. Thank you very much to the incredible Dr. Ian Harrison and the amazing Dr. Rosie Jackson from Dundee and UCL. You've been brilliant, and thank you very much for taking time out your day to join us. And we'll see you all next week in the salon. Thank you. Bye.